Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the January meeting of the Cabinet. For the public record, we have Cabinet here in the room, as well as senior officers. Some non-Cabinet members are also present, and officers are also joining the meeting virtually online. If any virtual attendees wish to speak, if they could indicate with the yellow hand icon, and we will pick this up in the meeting. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded by the Council for subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site. Can we start with some introductions from the Cabinet members, please? And can you state your portfolio areas? And can I just ask that when other speakers come forward, if they can also please introduce themselves. So if I can start with Councillor Williams.
Sarah Williams, Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning and Deputy Leader.
Donna Carlin, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services.
I'm Emily Arkel, I'm the Cabinet Lead for Culture and Leisure.
Lucia Desneves, Cabinet Member for Health, Social Care and Wellbeing.
AshlaOvat, Cabinet Member for Communities.
Seema Chandwani, Cabinet Member for Tackling Inequalities in Resident Services.
I'm Sina Brabson, Cabinet Member for Children, Schools and Families.
Thank you all. Richard, do we have any apologies for absence?
We do, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Gordon and Councillor Ali.
Thank you. Item 3, urgent business. There are no new items of urgent business. Item 4, declarations of interest. Can Cabinet members please indicate if they have any declarations of interest to make tonight? Okay, no declarations of interest. Item 5, which is the notice of intention to conduct business in private. Representations received and the response to any such representation. So there were no representations received at the publication stage in relation to the exempt items on the agenda. Item 6, minutes. Can we please confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of December 2025 as a correct record, please? Great, thank you. Item 7, deputations, petitions, questions. None were received. Item 8, matters referred to Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. None were received. So if we go to item 9, which is the acquisition of 12 council homes at 67 Lawrence Road. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. So the driving mission of this council is to build a fairer and greener borough. London has a housing crisis, and we are seeing more and more local residents unable to afford rents, let alone afford to buy. To do our part in addressing this situation, we, with financial support from both the Mayor of London and the government, are building at least 3,000 new council homes at council rents by 2031. We are creating more genuinely affordable homes for local people. Numbers are essential, but we're focused as much on quality as quantity. We're building homes that will last with great insulation standards, great interior and exterior design standards, and a strong mix of family and individual homes. We make sure homes are well insulated and energy efficient as possible because we want homes that are not just affordable to rent, but affordable to run. But we are also buying homes where we can and letting them out as council homes at council rents. When we buy, we make sure that the purchase price works out in the round and that quality meets a minimum standard. At 67 Lawrence Road, we're buying 12 homes to let at council rents. Almost half of the flats, that's 5, are 2-bedroom family homes. 4 of the homes are wheelchair accessible. Every flat has its own private balcony or terrace, and there's a shared communal garden too. We're steadily expanding the supply of genuinely affordable housing in our borough, month on month, year on year, to help more and more residents get a home at a fair rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Is there any questions from the Cabinet? No. Any questions online? Councillor Emery, can you hear us?
Yes, there is. I'm having a few issues connection-wise, so I'm just joining in with the with my over the line rather than over video, if that's okay.
Go ahead and ask your questions.
Yes, apologies. Yeah, I'm just sorry. It's coming in a little bit late on the There's a bit of a delay. Apologies, I'm going to try and reconnect. Apologies.
Just for the benefit of those on screen, we're just waiting for Councillor Emery to reconnect because he has a few questions. We'll give a couple of minutes, and if he hasn't managed, we'll move on and he can perhaps come back and ask the questions.
What?
Hello, I'm not sure if you can hear me now.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Apologies about that. I've had to
No,
switch
it's
over
okay.
to my phone. There's been some connection issues with it. Let me know if there's any problems with coming through. Three questions on this one. The first one is to do with shared ownership. Just wondering why they haven't been acquired as shared ownership and why they've been acquired as council owned. Just the reasoning in the background behind that. The second one is to do with the other 2,000 council homes that have been planned in the pipeline. And I was just wondering, in terms of whether these were dependent at all on the acquisition of private development. Is that something the council is going to be looking towards as a source of opportunity for this? And the last one is a bit of a technical one, because there's a reference there to the extract ventilation system. Just wondering if I can get an explanation in terms of how that works, in terms of, you know, if it's an extremely hot day outside, is that going to still be able to function? Is that something the council's looking at? I'm aware that's a technical question, but something I'm still interested to get a response to.
Well, I'll have a go. As far as the shared ownership, this is a private developer who, during the getting planning permission, presumably had a registered provider in mind to offer the shared ownership flats, and presumably that's no longer available to them. Hence, they've approached us for purchase. But obviously, that's for themselves to know, really. We have a target on acquisition of 250 a year. That's outside of our 3,000 delivery target. So it's a bit of both, I think, is the answer to your question, if that was the question. And then I think the third question, although it was very difficult to tell, was something to do with mechanical ventilation and overheating. So I'll bring Grace in on that because she has all of the technical detail at her fingertips.
I might have to go away and get a technical response on the MVHR system, but it would need to be compliant with our planning requirements around overheating. So if that's okay, I can get more details from the developer and bring that back.
Thanks, Grace.
Okay.
Thank you. Is that okay, Scott?
Yeah, that's fine. I understand it's a technical point, but it's one I wanted to still have a response to in the end. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I was just going to take the opportunity to say that in earlier news, the Mayor of London today did launch a plan to deliver thousands of rent-controlled homes, affordable homes for London's key workers, and he's got a target of 6,000 by 2030. And I'm actually quoted in the statement, so we had a big announcement there. So that's something to digest, but I'm hoping that Haringey will benefit from that. But just that was hot off the press, and I thought I'd take the opportunity to share. Okay, so moving on, if there's no more questions, we will return to the resolutions around after considering the exempt information item 17 on this. So if we can move on to item 10, which is adopting an updated damp and mould policy, and over to you again, Councillor Williams.
We're building a fairer borough in Haringey, and everyone having a safe, warm, comfortable and affordable home is part of that mission. No one should be living with damp and mould. It is basic social injustice that we want to bring to an end. We've set a zero tolerance approach towards damp and mould. This policy, which we first introduced in 2023, is now being updated to reflect the introduction of Awab's law and new timescales for dealing with damp and mould. It sets out how we aim to provide and maintain dry, warm, healthy homes for our tenants and leaseholders. The insights and experiences of our residents, particularly through the Resident Voice Board and the Council's Residents Repairs and Maintenance Continuous Improvement Group, have played a key role in shaping this policy. These resident groups ensure ongoing engagement and co-creation in our policies, and I want to really express my gratitude to these groups for their invaluable input, which has helped this policy to better reflect the needs of our communities, and they do put an awful lot of hours into this for nothing much more than tea and a biscuit, so it's brilliant. And to say that across the borough we are retrofitting and refurbishing council homes. Our estate renovation plan will put more than 500 million into home improvements over the next 10 years, driving up the comfort and quality of our homes. It will bring 100% of council homes in Haringey to decent home standards by 2028, which will take the average council home from a C grade energy rating to B grade, cutting bills for thousands of residents. That means double glazing going in, new modern boilers, wall and loft insulation, new front and back doors, for example, and many more things. Eliminating damp and mould is essential to our mission to make our borough fairer and more equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do we have any questions from the Cabinet on this item? I know we've had lots of opportunities to feed into this policy already. Councillor Emery?
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it. Yeah, 3 questions on this one. So first off, obviously appreciate the improvements that we're making in this sector. It's a really important one for Haringey to try and improve on. One thing I do worry about, there's a lot of residents that I know personally have had issues with damp and mould in the private sector. I just wanted some assurances the council was still looking to improve the damp and mould situations for people in private sector as well. So I just wanted some ideas and some assurances on what would be what kind of improvements the council were looking to make there. The second one then is to do with solid wall insulation. There are some statistics that point towards, because this report mentions the idea of solid wall insulation being something the council is looking to do. Obviously, if you look at the data online about that, it does have a bit of quite a high fault rate, up to 98%. And I'm just wondering if the council could seek towards maybe could give an answer on whether they thought that was still going to be effective as treating damp and mould when it does have those kind of poor effective rates. And then the third one then is to do with gas hobs, which is obviously quite an important one in terms of reducing water vapour in homes, and that isn't any mention of trying to solve that as a problem. Just wondering whether the council had considered that switch from gas hobs to induction hobs.
Yeah. So I think on the private rented sector, of course, nobody wants damp and mould in any home of any tenure. I think the government is have indicated they're going to consult on extending AWEB's law into the private rented sector, but the private rented sector does already have conditions through licensing, etc., which I think you would like to come in on. And then I think for the second question, I have to say I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I'm hoping Scott heard it properly. And then Scott, can you answer the gas hobs and the extractor fans, I imagine, question? Question 3, are we moving to electric? Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everybody. With regards to the, I think it was the external wall insulation question, which is, it's an option as part of a range of solutions, and each property and each solution will be assessed on its merits, and the right actions will be taken for that particular property in those particular circumstances. So it is considered as part of a range of options. And the one with regards to switching from gas to electric, we are again looking at a range of options. We have considered energy and energy provision in our asset management strategy, and we're also looking at that as part of our electrical inspection programme. And it's more a case of ensuring that the options are available for our tenants. It's difficult to enforce the removal of gas from residents when it's their choice, but if it's an option, especially in higher risk buildings, we will always take that option.
Hubert now.
Thank you, Councillor. So as Councillor Williams has stated, we applied the same enforcement rig in the private sector in terms of damp and mould, and we have our enforcement officers that out there applying that to the best of our abilities. As Councillor Williams said, we do not want any of our residents, whether it's our own stock or in the private rented stock, living in damp and mould. So rest assured, we do apply the letter of the law in terms of regulating in terms of damp and mould.
Sorry, I was a bit distracted with everyone coughing and walking out the room. Okay, there's no more questions on that. If we can move to the resolution, which is to agree what's laid out on page 56 of the agenda. Are we all in agreement?
Agreed.
All in agreement? Thank you. Item 11, thank you, Scott. Item 11, which is the approval of Haringey Library Strategy 2026 to 2030. Councillor Arkell, if you can introduce, please.
Thank you, Leader. Libraries are far more than buildings with books. They are vibrant cornerstones of our community and places where opportunity, imagination and connection come to life. In Haringey, our libraries have long been spaces where young people of all ages and backgrounds come together to learn, share and thrive. Figures from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport have shown the scale of closures elsewhere. Since 2010, 276 library buildings in England have shut, including 22 in London. And BBC research, which was published in March 2025, found 190 closures in the past 5 years, and 20 of those being in London. But none of these were in Haringey. Our new library strategy sets out a bold and future-focused vision to ensure these spaces remain dynamic, inclusive and indispensable. The vision is rooted in extensive engagement with residents, young people, staff, partners and stakeholders, and hundreds of voices have been gathered through surveys, workshops and community conversations, which have shaped a strategy grounded in the real experiences and aspirations of our residents in Haringey. The strategy commits us to championing inclusion and equity, inspiring learning and creativity, strengthening community well-being, harnessing digital innovation and embedding sustainability for the long term. It also reflects the global shift in trends in library use, such as rising digital service engagement and increased demand for inclusive spaces that support lifelong learning, creativity, well-being and community participation. Our strategy future-proofs Haringey's libraries through a flexible and adaptive service model. Alongside our borough-wide strategy, bespoke development plans will be developed for each of our 9 libraries, and these will be developed collaboratively between library staff, friends groups and library users, and will be living documents with plenty of opportunity for all to continue to influence and shape their local library. Our library strategy is ambitious yet practical, and it is underpinned by the core principles in our arts and culture strategy. It also provides a preview for how our library services will feature in our plans and preparations for hosting the year-long London Borough of Culture in 2027 as hubs for creative and community activities, at the same time as embracing innovation to meet future challenges. Above all, it reflects the passion of our residents. So tonight, I'm seeking Cabinet's approval for this shared vision, one that ensures Haringey's libraries continue to enrich lives, strengthen communities and remain vital public assets for generations to come.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Arkell. And I'll take the opportunity just to thank you and the whole team really, because this has been a lot of work that's gone into it over many years. So Kenneth, Brian, Jess, thank you very much. Any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Brabazon.
I think this is a great report, and I think it's terrific that we've got a strategy for the next 5 years. What I'd like to ask you is if you could perhaps describe some of the more recent innovations and initiatives that are underway in the libraries, and also what might be happening with the National Year of Reading.
Tonight. So we have some of the most recent initiatives going on in libraries. I'll hand over to the team to talk about in a bit more detail. But in terms of the Year of Reading, obviously children and young people are going to be integral to that. So children and parents are our biggest user group, and we obviously gather a lot of information and feedback through them. And we also try and engage directly with primary schools through either visits to libraries directly, or if they can't come to the library directly, we'll do an outreach service to them. So we've made sure that during the development of this strategy that youth voice is built in directly. And obviously you will know through the work that you do in your role, we've got a very active youth parliament and new youth advocates and advisory boards, and they will have a direct link in and a voice in the development of the library plans and shaping future directions. So the strategy's got some really clear points that lead up into like the Year of Reading. So we've obviously got a commitment to create a early years and families advisory forum to ensure that their needs reflect, that family insight and their needs is reflected in the development of those strategies. We also want to encourage every primary school to visit the library annually and make sure that each child receives a membership card. So we've got that that kind of like link between children and families right from an early stage, and they see that libraries are for them. And finally, we're going to make sure that throughout the year that, as you've mentioned, it's the Year of Reading, and that each library plays a role in fostering a love of learning and reading from an early stage. Do you want to answer the second bit?
Thank you for the question. I think we might do a double act here. Sorry, Kenneth, Director of Culture and Communities. Look, in terms of innovation, the things we do in libraries are changing and growing all the time. A couple that I might highlight. We've had a very successful series of events called Library Lates. They were originally done in collaboration with Alexandra Palace and their Young Creatives Network. And these were events that took place outside normal library hours in the evenings, but they're events curated by, for, and with young people. And they've been very successful. And although that particular collaboration with Ali Pali, the funding for that, external funding that came for that has ended, we're still trying to continue that notion and that model on our own steam. You might have been aware that recently we introduced 3 creative and maker spaces into our libraries, particularly aimed at young people. These allow them to create music or do podcasts. And we also introduced in 3 of our libraries, Logic in libraries. Logic is advanced music production software. And we managed to get, these would be special computers. Mac computers were donated to us. So that also exists in 3 libraries. Those are just some of the examples, but I might hand over to Brian in case he has any other examples of innovation, and also maybe just say something briefly about National Year of Reading.
Thank you, Brian Mahayo, Head of Libraries. Just to add to the answer that Councillor Gill gave. So I've just recently met with colleagues on public health. So one of our key things through the strategy is to ensure that we are engaging with families, so mothers at the stage of pregnancy, and really building a partnership with health visitors. So that's on track to really ensure that it's from birth up into adulthood. So that's just one example. Just around the National Year of Reading, so it's a massive initiative throughout the whole year. So we will be targeting our usual programs such as Summer Reading Challenge, our partnership with Ali Pali around Bibliobuzz, and looking at other bespoke initiatives that we work with young people just to build and ensure that reading is really at the forefront of what we do this year. So yeah, that's just a few things that we do to engage young people particularly.
You, Councillor Carlin?
We know that our libraries, we're also going to be looking at the commercial potential of our libraries, which is important. But how will you ensure that our libraries preserve their cultural value while we strengthen and recognise the commercial value that they can deliver?
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. So the strategy obviously recognises libraries as both they're both their cultural and community assets. And in October last year, 2025, the last piece of investment, which totalled £4.9 million across all of the branch libraries, was finally delivered with Muswell Hill reopening, which means that all of our libraries are now accessible and welcoming. So the strategy sets out obviously the need for sustainability, but also an affordable service that's going to boost the usage and will help grow the income and help libraries withstand some of the financial pressures that we're facing at the moment that you're very familiar with. So that higher usage will directly strengthen their future, and we've talked about this a lot through the various consultations that happened. So I personally see that there's significant untapped potential in our spaces for both community benefit and commercial use. But realising this means having a well-promoted offer and better integration with the council's wide booking system. So the strategy responds to changing patterns of use. So, for example, digital engagement has surged in the last year that we were able to extrapolate data. There are over 68,000 more digital items borrowed than in previous years, and that's almost 10 times in the year before the pandemic. So we're committed to transforming our digital and IT provision, improving how we communicate what we're offering, and supporting residents who face barriers, the digital exclusion, to get online. And we think that those steps will help our libraries more accessible, resilient and future focused and sustainable for the future as well.
Any more questions from the Cabinet? No. Okay, Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. First off, can you commit to no reduction to Saturday opening hours for Harringay Library over the next few years? That's the question. Secondly, in regard to the library of things, it's disappointing that this wasn't taken forward as an option. I know it's an option in other boroughs. I don't believe the fiction factory is an option. If you don't have anything, that it's not going to be a viable option. Did the council look to see how much it would have cost to set up and run this? Did it factor in the costs on this? Obviously, there's also the benefit of how much it saves residents out of each year. I know other boroughs have looked to do this out of libraries, so that's another way of increasing footfall in libraries too. And then lastly, I just want to get a bit more information about the community librarian. Just wondering if you can explain how that role works. How many hours a week will they be working? Is this on top or instead of a regular librarian hours? Thanks.
I'll take the first two and then I'll hand over to you for the second and third. So we've been really clear about our opening hours, and the decision that was taken by the Cabinet in December 2024 and then unanimously upheld by the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee in January 2025 is that the decision that we made around opening hours was probably one of the most difficult ones that we've had to make as a council. It was a decision that was made based on data and about promoting a principle of equity to protect our wards in the east of the borough, where there are significant levels of deprivation, and that's why we decided to keep the libraries open for longer periods of time than in other parts of the borough. You will be very well aware of the very significant financial challenges that this council is facing at the moment. And as I've mentioned in my introduction, we are not in the position that some of our neighbouring boroughs to the north and to the south of us are having to make, in which they are closing libraries. So we are obviously committed through this strategy to make our libraries sustainable, and to look at ways that they can income generate and can be used as commercial for commercial uses as well. And that may well lead to looking at how those libraries may be opening outside of the hours that they are at the moment. But I think until we are in a position financially where we are able to look at the opening hours, they are staying exactly as they are, and as they were, the decision was made at the Cabinet in December 2024 and by the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee in January 2025. Just in terms of the Library of Things, that was something that I was obviously very keen on as well when we started to talk about the library development of the library strategy. But having seen it operate in other boroughs, so we have gone outside of Haringey to see how it works in other boroughs, it is actually not something that is kind of financially viable here. And I'm going to hand over to Kenneth and to Brian to give a bit more information about that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cole. Yes, we did explore this because in principle, it seemed like a good idea, and it was a previous manifesto pledge. However, when we look closely at the operating model, we looked at the setup costs, which were between 30 and 45k. We looked per year, sorry, setup costs, and then we looked at the monthly service fees, which would be a minimum of £2,000. So we're talking about £24,000 annually. And then the council would also have to pay for rental item replacement. So we were looking at potential footing a bill of roughly 65, 70,000 per year, which could fluctuate. And we weren't convinced that we could operate a model that in any time soon where we would actually cut our cloth and not be actually sort of subsidizing this to quite a large degree. And under the current financial restraints, we just didn't feel it was viable. There was one other aspect to the model, which was to do with where Library of Things like to place them. Now, we would ideally want to place this in the area, in the libraries where there is most need in the borough, either in the centre or east. But I think the Library of Things tend to place them would rather place it in the west of the borough, where perhaps there is less social need for those things, but they can guarantee a model that brings them their income. So it felt that there was actually a fundamental sort of dynamic tension between the ethos of the model and how it would work in our borough alongside the financial challenges. I'll hand over to Brian for the other question.
Thank you. Just to touch on the community librarians question, if I heard it right. So as part of our changes to our library opening hours, we had to undertake a staff restructure. But prior to that, we listened to members of the public in terms of what they would like to see from us service offer. So we conducted a housekeeping exercise internally, just looking at titles, specialisms, and as a result, the name changed from a generic title to community librarians to ensure that the specialisms or the importance of libraries was at the forefront in terms of what we do. As part of the changes as well, the key change was that every library site branch will have a community librarian. They are a combination of part-time, full-time, and it's what was really important was the connection between the community librarian with that locality, friends groups, and library users. So they're the key changes that we felt was key to make, and it's been welcomed well in terms of our current engagement with local friends and other members of the public as well.
Thank you all. Okay, if we can move to the resolution, which is on page 100 of the agenda, are we all in agreement? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 12, which is single-use plastics policy and action plan. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kenneth. Councillor Chanwani.
Thank you, Leader. Single-use plastics is defined as any plastic used once, just in case you guys needed clarity. We have a single-use plastics policy during 2020 to 2022 at the height of COVID, which presented its own challenges. However, there are some successes which are highlighted in 6.15 of the report. With government legislation changing from the simpler recycling policy and recent changes with businesses needing to dispose of food waste, now is the time for us to revise an updated single-use policy and action plan. The action plan is built on 4 areas. That's council operations, how we're working with schools, awareness and education, and local businesses. I'm happy to take questions which either myself, Beth, or Hubert will respond to with their reusable bottles, if you've noticed. And I'd like to thank everyone who's worked really hard in putting this together.
Thank you, Councillor Chanwani. Any questions from the Cabinet on this report? No. Okay. Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. And I can see that Councillor Chandwani's cup is a food recyclable one. If I can see from here, that looks that looks like what it is. While not a significant impact, the council still uses single-use plastics in council meetings with its food and drink. Would you agree that it's important for the council to lead by example and try and shift away from this? And the second question too, are you going to try and seek to push companies running inside council properties and other businesses that operate within Haringey Council to try and follow these similar rules? Is that something the council is seeking to push these companies to do?
Thank you. So the policy and action plan, which I know you've read in so much detail, Scott, so I'm already telling you stuff you already know, is covering 4 areas. And one of them is the council and how we are going to overcome some of our single-use plastic usage in all kind of circumstances. So we're not saying that it's perfect. If it was perfect, we wouldn't need an action plan, and we definitely wouldn't feature in it. But you're absolutely right. We do need to ensure that we are setting an example. I would also say trying to find plastic cups is also quite hard to purchase now because it's not something that's easy to get. So it's not just something we're doing, it's something that the market's also doing and really pushing people towards doing it. I'm not going to lie, I couldn't really hear your second question. I think it was about businesses, is that right?
Yeah, so it's in regard to businesses that run inside council businesses and businesses that operate inside council properties. Just wondering whether the council is seeking to push this action plan as a model for those businesses or to follow the same kind of direction as this.
So I'll hand over to Beth, but our kind of ethos here is to take people with us. So there's no plans to use our commercial portfolio to kind of put it down as a requirement of their lease to use single-use plastics. But obviously we would be working with any businesses, not just the ones where we're the corporate landlord, to also work with them to reduce their single-use plastics use. But I'll hand over to Beth.
So we've already incorporated as part of the, I don't know, I'm looking at the screen actually, sorry, it's really distracting. We have already incorporated elements within our procurement in terms of, if you mean companies that are delivering services for the council, so they would obviously be subject to procurement, and as part of that we now have the social value model, which includes environmental policies within that or scoring. So that's the way that that is dealt with. And then as Seema said about in terms of our commercial waste portfolio for businesses that might be using our property, it is a free market. So we are obviously not allowed to insist that they use our services. But yes, of course, we'll be looking to encourage this sort of behaviour anyway. Excuse me, the simpler recycling legislation already has requirements on businesses in terms of plastics anyway, and we will be looking at that through our commercial waste provision.
Thank you, Beth. So if we can move to the resolution, which is on page 212 of the agenda, are we all in agreement? Great, excellent, thank you. So if we move to item 13, which is the minutes of other bodies, so can we please note the minutes of the cabinet member sign-ins, which are on pages 231 to 268. Can we just note those, please? Thank you. Item 14, which is significant and delegated actions. Can we note the significant and delegated actions taken by directors? And these are on pages 269 to 270. Can we just note those, please? Thank you. Item 15, new items urgent business. There are none. So if I can move to 16, which is exclusion of the press and public. Item 17 allows for consideration of exempt information in relation to item 9. So if I can move for the press and public to be excluded from the remainder of the meeting. This is to consider exempt information, which is defined under paragraphs 3, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do we all agree? Thank you. So if I can formally close the public section of the meeting, thank you.